I want to move on to the role that the government should or should not be playing in this. Jerry mentioned that basically if it was feasible to create these efficient technologies, the market would have produced them.
That's a fallacy.
Okay, so do you believe that the government should be playing an active role in investing in these technologies?
I believe the government can incentivize them, and they can shift where their investment dollars are currently going over to someplace else. I don't think they need to, create a whole bunch of giant new programs. I think they just need to shift their priorities a bit. But to say that if we could be this efficient, we would be this efficient is a fallacy, because it completely ignores the fact that we've had no incentive to be this efficient for as long as energy has been cheap. And other people at the same time has had a lot of incentive to prevent that efficiency because they're making money hand over fist over the fact that energy is still relatively cheap. Now, I know that the price of gas is going up and our heating bills are getting higher and higher every year, but as a factor of all of the things we pay for from our monthly budgets and annual budgets, energy is still, and especially here in the United States, is still extremely inexpensive. And so we have no incentive to be more efficient about it. We will, I think, in the very near future. As for judging the environmentalists by what was said before most of them were born, I don't think that's appropriate in any sense of the word. I mean, I don't want to be held to the predictions that a bunch of guys who I don't know made before I was born. I don't know that very many people do. A lot of the research and the surveys now out show that most of the push in the climate and environmental movements is coming from people under the age of 30. 75% of people the ages 18 to 29 support the House climate bill. I don't know what the Senate one is. That was just announced recently, so there probably hasn't been a poll yet for those people. But the overwhelming majority of the environmental movement and the people pushing these changes weren't around in the 70s to dispute these people or tell them that they were jumping to conclusions or anything like that. So the fact that the people who were making these arguments in the 70s are still making these arguments, okay, maybe that's a problem, but you can't judge the entire environmental movement by that when they're actually a very small percentage of the people who are now behind taking action on climate change and the environment. So,
well, what about, I think Jerry brought up something that I think a lot of conservatives are worried about, and it's this idea that this whole idea of global warming is an excuse for liberals to push these projects that they've wanted for a long time.
I don't think it's an excuse. As for people telling someone how they should or should not live, people don't like being told how they should live only when they don't like what they're being told they should do. So if your doctor tells you that you need to do something, you generally listen to them because you believe it's in your own best interest. But if they tell you that, I mean, as we can see from anybody who's ever tried to stop smoking or lose weight or, stop eating salt or cut out, like their favorite ice cream or something, it's extremely hard to stop ingrained habits. And as a society has way more momentum for that than a single person does. So it's extremely hard to change our ingrained habits. And as a whole, we don't like being told what we should and should not do, especially when we disagree with what we're being told. So that doesn't mean that people should stop telling us what they think may be best. I mean, we can't expect people to do that. I mean, when I say that we should walk more and drive less, that's my personal opinion. I'm not going to go around smacking people with sticks if they don't do it the way I want them to.
So you're not saying that the government should be forcing people to do these things?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. But they can incentivize them. They can change. The cap-and-trade system over in Europe has helped Europe meet its Kyoto protocols. I'm going to have to respectfully disagree there. And they've done it with less of an increase in electricity prices over the last 3 years than has been seen in the United States. In the last 3 years, their electricity prices went up 17.5%, and our electricity prices went up 19%. So if cap and trade is ruining the economy, I'd like to ask whose economy? We also implemented cap and trade decades, well, maybe not decades, but in the 90s, I believe, late 80s, early 90s, on SO2, which is sulfur dioxide, which is a key component in acid rain. And that worked. And there was a whole cap and trade system with marketable changes there, and now everybody's in compliance. That worked fine. The economic apocalypse did not occur. So, the arguments that trying to reduce carbon emissions is going to ruin the economy and it's going to lead to the liberal takeover of the country is just ridiculous.
Sorry, cap and trade hasn't cap and trade hasn't ruined the European economies because their emission limits were so loose. They're basically put no constraint on the economies at all. I mean, and even environmentalists, better educated environmentalists will admit this, that basically they issued far too many carbon credits in Europe, basically because they didn't want to shut down their economy. So they put in this sort of phony cap and trade system there, which basically issued far too many carbon credits. They set up the trading system, but it really hasn't reduced Europe's carbon emissions. Europe is emitting carbon just as we are. And so that is, and to say that it's sort of a cop-out to say, oh, we're all under 30. John Holdren's not under 30. He's working for the White House on this problem. Paul Ehrlich's still around. He's still a dean of the environmental movement. The Environmental Defense Fund, all the environmental organizations, the Sierra Club, signed on to this stuff in the 70s. They're still around. So the heads, the personnel may have changed, but the organizations are still the same. The movement's still the same. It's like saying, was Lenin not a Marxist because Marx was dead when Lenin was around? Of course not. I mean, the environmental movement has had a continuous existence since the 70s, and they've been essentially pushing the same formulas. And some of the personnel really are the same.
Some of them are, and maybe they need to go, but I wouldn't hold the entire movement responsible for what a bunch of guys in the 70s said.
Okay, so we're going to want to bring this to a close about now. So just imagine that I'm President Obama, and I've been hearing a lot about this global warming thing or the climate change thing, and my ears are open. I want to hear what you have to say about it. What's going on and what should be done or should not be done according to you?
I would simply say that climate change is happening, which you, President Obama, agree with. It is man-made, which you also agree with. It needs to be dealt with, and it can be dealt with at an economic gain.
I think you should build nukes. There are a lot of things you should do whether or not climate change is true. We should rejuvenate our nuclear program. That would help with carbon emissions. It's not the main reason we should rejuvenate our nuclear program, but we should do it anyway. We should keep doing research. We're putting a whole lot more money into research isn't going to help a great deal because there's diminishing returns of the research. You're doubling the amount of money that goes into research doesn't double the potency of your research results, if you like. We shouldn't hold out any hopes for a breakthrough in research because, let's say, most of these fields are pretty mature and we've been working on them for a long time. That doesn't mean there won't be a breakthrough. It's just it's not. The low-hanging fruit is gone. Okay, we can maybe build solar cells, but we should expect better solar cells, but we should expect incremental increases in efficiency, and we can do that with batteries and so on. So a lot of the things that will ultimately help are probably already being done. What worries me is if we put in essentially put in measures that will severely limit economic growth, and that's what a real cap and trade system would do. Because if you're going to limit carbon dioxide emissions, you basically really need to have, you're going to force the prices of energy up. There's no other way around it. If you force the price of energy up, you're going to reduce economic growth. It's nice to say, well, we can do this with efficiency, but the fact is we can't.
True.
That's the great thing about zombies. It's like playing Doom. You just no ethics involved.